Hello, my name is Dr. Thomas Budd. I'm a lecturer in the Centre for Air Transport Management at Cranfield University, and I'm also one of the academic leads in the Digital Aviation Research and Technology Centre. And I'm very happy to give a short presentation today around the role that technology and materials can play in restoring passenger confidence in flying post-COVID-19, and in turn the role that these things can play in aviation's recovery from the pandemic. All of you will be aware of the devastating impact that COVID-19 and the travel restrictions that followed have had on the global air transport industry. The impact this has had in terms of the reduction of passenger numbers across the industry, with many airlines grounding their entire fleets, airports being left virtually empty, has dwarfed any of the past shocks and disruptions to air travel that we have seen in the past. ICAO estimate that by the end of 2020, there will have been a decline in world passenger traffic of between 57 and 61%. The hope and expectation is that demand for air travel will recover eventually, but things are going to look very different for air travel for quite some time, we think. Key to that recovery will be restoring passengers' confidence, or bioconfidence, as often referred to, in travel, ensuring and making passengers feel safe to travel, because there remain significant concerns amongst passengers around contracting the virus at various stages of the air travel journey. So a recent study conducted by IATA, who are the global trade body who represent airlines, shows that the vast majority of people still feel somewhat concerned or very concerned about contracting the virus while travelling. This is despite significant efforts on the part of aviation to communicate scientific research that shows that air travel is actually considerably less risky than other forms of public transport in terms of contracting the virus, particularly with regards to the onboard experience, the ventilation of air within the aircraft cabin, and the filters that are prevalent in modern aircraft designs. The HEPA filters, or high efficiency particulate air filters, are very effective at filtering out bioaerosols and other pollutants in the cabin. Yet there are significant areas of concern for passengers, particularly things like sitting next to someone who is infected on board the aircraft, given the close proximity to other passengers in most modern aircraft, as well as being in crowded or congested areas, particularly buses or trains that take passengers to and from the aircraft, as well as things like using restroom facilities and toilets both on board the aircraft and in the airport. So these are real areas that air travel will need to address and focus on in order to restore confidence. But there is an opportunity as well as a challenge here to ensure greater health and safety benefits across the passenger journey. This is not just a COVID-related issue, but there are opportunities here to try and reduce aviation's role as being a vector for communicable diseases. There are thought to be three key sources of infection from air travel. The first of which is referred to as direct contact. So this is where an infected person may be coughing or sneezing, talking, and infecting passengers or people who are close by. So this would be relevant in the case of COVID-19, where we look at interventions to try and ensure social distancing, for example, the idea being that we reduce the potential for direct contact. This is most likely to occur in crowded and congested areas. So at the gate, where passengers are waiting to board, at security, queuing for security, or also at border control as well as passengers boarding and disembarking the aircraft. The second major source of infection is from indirect contact. So this is touching contaminated surfaces, items or people, and focus on the main touch points along the passenger journey. So people touching doors or handles when using restroom facilities, using touchscreen self-service check-in facilities at check-in, as well as at security. So using the plastic trays where you place your valuables and your bags when going through security, a very common touch point, as well as things on board the aircraft like the in-flight entertainment system, another common touch point. Lastly, and not relevant in a COVID context, but for diseases including malaria or the Zika virus, for example, is transmitted by vectors. So mosquitoes, flies, ticks, or other vectors that carry the virus. And this is an issue in terms of managing particularly open air spaces where mosquitoes and other flies, things like that, could breed and live. In terms of this presentation, and I have only a short period of time, the focus here is on indirect contact. So the second major group, because there is a role here for materials and technology to play a role in particularly things like removing physical touch points. So we talk about the use of technology and smart systems here as a key facilitator of this. So things like gesture control and motion control sensors for things like toilet doors, or common use self-service systems, in-flight entertainment, or elevators. This is technology that's relatively prevalent already, but we're seeing it increasingly applied in an air transport context. There are also aspects for things like biometrics, so things like facial recognition technology, iris recognition for border control and security control. These were aspects that were already being looked at prior to COVID, but there are now also a real motivation behind looking at these technologies as a mechanism for reducing queuing, for example, and congestion of people within border control or security. We're also increasingly seeing the use of smart systems for things like cleaning and service provision. So these are systems where a series of sensors can detect areas that are being used highly within the terminal at any one time. So it could be toilet facilities or seating areas that have been utilized extensively, and that can trigger a decision to increase cleaning and sanitation in that area, for example. So that could be manual cleaning provision from a team of cleaners, sort of traditional cleaning, but also automated systems. So we're seeing increasing use of AI and robotics for things like cleaning large terminal areas, for example. So this is an example where existing and advances in technology around AI, smart systems are also being applied in a sort of bio-health and COVID-19 related context. The other major area relates to cleaning and disinfection, and there are two major areas here. The first of which is known as active cleaning and disinfection, and we refer to enhanced sanitation of surfaces. And I say enhanced in sort of commas because sanitation provision in aviation was already quite extensive, but now there is a need to demonstrate this enhanced level of cleaning. So this can be the use of traditional disinfectants and sprays, as we see on the image there, but also the use of innovations like UVC light, which is increasingly being used to treat surfaces to kill bacteria and help against the spread of the virus. There's also a role here for cabin design, overall design, and the types of materials that are incorporated within the cabin. So there is an increased focus on the physical design of the cabin in a way that smooths that cleaning process, and so smooth surfaces, seats, cabin products that are easy to clean, quick to clean as well. An example being in terms of cleaning provision from Ryanair, the example on the screen, they removed the seatback covers that hold magazines and newspapers, and that really speeded up the process of cleaning the aircraft. So there are a whole raft of changes here around design that can really improve and be relevant in this context. The second major type is passive cleaning and disinfection. So this relates to applying particularly antimicrobial films and adhesives applied to existing assets. So there's an example here from Corsair, who have applied antimicrobial layers to their tray tables, for example, and there is a visual identifier to show the passenger that this has been incorporated. There is a limit, of course, to what can be retrofitted in this way. So looking ahead, there may also be a role for incorporating antimicrobial additives and agents in the manufacturing process of those new assets from the outset. So that could be new trays, new onboard areas for stowing luggage, etc. But of course, there is a cost and a time angle to that. There are challenges, there are considerable opportunities as well, particularly around the technical feasibility of these solutions and how effective they are. There are financial implications, clearly, to particularly research and development in this area, which is especially challenging given the tough time that aviation is having. There are also operational challenges as well. I alluded to the fact that these interventions need to drop into existing operational regimes for airlines and airports, and anything that causes a large change in those things is unlikely to be successful. It's important that we remain in contact with our passenger groups. We have to appreciate their views and their perceptions about their acceptance and what they perceive to be safe and what they perceive to be benefiting them. So it's very important that passenger acceptance is incorporated within this process. Aviation is rightly renowned as being a very safe industry, and that's built upon a very rigorous and robust safety certification and standards process. So any changes to an aircraft cabin or any kind of thing that goes involved with an aircraft or an airport environment will have to undergo considerable certification and safety procedures, which can be quite a timely process. So thank you very much indeed. A very short presentation. I hope you found it useful and engaging. I would just like to point you to some work that we've undertaken in Dartec, particularly a 360 VR experience of our conceptualization of the future aircraft cabin. And if you are interested in learning more about this or in working with us in Dartec, please do get in touch with us and we'll be very happy to have a conversation with you. So thank you very much for listening. Enjoy the rest of your conference. I hope you find it useful and engaging, and thank you very much for your time.